This is called a WinnerVision baton. And I'm going to be asking you at the end of the seminar, would you like to take WinnerVision and run with it? And my goal is to share it with you, tell you how it's worked for me, and how it's worked for hundreds and hundreds of students, athletes, people in business. And my hope is that you decide you're going to take WinnerVision and run with it, use it for yourself, and then call me. Because I'm really busy during the day, but at night I sit by my phone and I'll be waiting for you to call because I want to hear what happens for you with WinnerVision. And what I'm going to do today is I am going to explain WinnerVision to you the way that I explained it to the athletes that used it. So you are going to hear what I told them and then what they did with it. And that is to inspire you that if it worked for them, it will work for you too. My main reason for putting WinnerVision together was because of an athlete that I was watching play tennis when I was coaching at the University of California at San Diego. And it was my #1 singles player, and I went to watch her win because she always won. And she lost badly. I had never seen her play like that. So I said, Kate, what were you thinking about when you were out there? She said, oh, I was just trying to figure out what I did wrong on my chemistry test. So basically, she showed up physically, but she didn't show up mentally. She wasn't there. She played her whole match, and she wasn't in the match mentally. So can you ever remember doing that sometime? Have you ever remembered going to a class, and you watched your instructor, and they were talking, and you didn't hear anything they said? Have you ever been in a situation where you were thinking so much about something else, you were physically, like I did one time in the car, I drove right past the exit. And I called my friend and I said, I'm sorry I'm not in Eugene, I'm in Cresswell right now. Why? Because I wasn't thinking about what I was doing. So it's a common problem. But the problem for me as a coach is that I had players come to matches that were really good tennis players, but they got to the tournament and they couldn't stay focused. They weren't there. And they also just had a preconceived idea that they were going to lose. So after seeing this for 4 years, I said, I wonder, is there any possible way that I can help them stay focused? And the reason I couldn't help them is because I didn't know how to stay focused. So I thought, I can't help them. I don't know how to do it myself. I played tennis for 15 years, and I would say I was focused maybe 50% of the time. But after WinnerVision, I learned how to stay focused instead of 50% of the time, 90% of the time. So it worked for me. And then I also learned how to be relaxed, cool, calm, and collected under pressure. And before that, I would have said, that's impossible. No one can do that. I had certainly never experienced it. So this is what I want to do. I want to tell you what I learned that works, and I can tell you that you will understand it. I have had a 5-year-old tell me, you know, Beth, WinnerVision really works. So, I mean, kids understand it. And I worked with a 9-year-old basketball team, and they picked it up like that. And so it's easy to understand. It's easy to use if you want to. And so what I'm going to do is start by there's 3 different parts to it. I'm going to explain it, and then I'm going to tell you the results of the athletes that used it. And I'm going to be talking a lot about basketball and football because I've worked with probably 20 basketball teams, 15 football teams. I've worked with athletes in every single sport there is. But I'm not going to tell you about all of them because you'd be here for 3 hours and you'd be on the floor saying, will somebody pay her to stop talking? So anyway, I'm just going to tell you about the highlights, the big wins. So to begin with, I'm going to ask Lydia, my good friend Lydia Yoder, to come up, and I want to do a skit to show you part 1 about WinnerVision. So you can sit down. It's a comfortable chair. This is a different chair than last time. She was in my last seminar too. And what I want to do is just tell you a very, very important part about WinnerVision that will come up again and again in the stories that I tell you. But first of all, you have to use your imagination a little bit because Lydia is really well, she just turned 15, but in the skit, she's in the first grade. And so you have to use your imagination, and she was smaller than this in the first grade. So you have to kind of shrink her down. And I become her teacher, and she has just finished her first math test. And I come up to her and I say, you know, Lydia, I've been looking at your test here, and, well, you got them all wrong. And, I mean, this one's wrong, every one of these is wrong. So take this home and show it to your parents. I mean, I remember now I had your older sister in my class, and she couldn't do math either. So anyway, just take it home and show it to your parents, and, you know, maybe they can help you. So she takes it home, and I become her mother, and it goes, oh, Lydia, I'm sorry. I can't do math either. Oh, well, that's okay. And then her sister comes in and goes, well, I can't do math either. It must run in the family. Then her father comes in and looks at the test and goes, okay, marry somebody like me, because I can balance a checkbook. So, I mean, that'll work. You don't have to worry about it. It's okay. So she goes back, and her teacher points out to the class, I hope you don't follow Lydia's example. I mean, she was looking out the window. She wasn't really trying that hard. And so, sorry, Lydia. Okay, so what has happened? Lydia has had a negative experience. She had her teacher say, well, your sister couldn't do math. You can't do math. That's the way it is. And she went home, and her mother said, well, I can't do math either. And her sister said, oh, it runs in the family. Her father says, just marry somebody like me. That'll work. And she gets back to school. Everybody knows she's the girl that can't do math. So where do you think she sits when she goes to her math class as time goes on? In the front or in the back? She sits in the back. She has basically given up on herself when it comes to math, and she develops what's called a negative self-image. I mean, she sees herself failing in math, which a lot of times carries over into other areas in school. And she sees herself as a failure. Well, now she's 14 years old, and this is what she looks like at 14. So anyway, she has a math class. She's in the 7th grade. And her teacher says, Lydia, I know how you feel about math. I know that you don't think you can do it. But you know what? I felt the same way at your age, and I found out that I could do math, and I found out it was fun. And I just want to prove to you that you can learn math. Would you be willing to try and give me a chance to just show you that you can do math? Would you? Well, that's wonderful. It won't take that long, a couple weeks. I just want to prove to you that you can learn it. Okay, well, Lydia agrees to try. So anyway, some time goes by, and I say, class, do you remember Lydia that had so much trouble with math? Well, guess what? She just got the highest grade in the math class. And Lydia finds out that she likes math, and she finds out that she can learn math. And what happened? Basically, she changed her self-image from a negative self-image to a positive self-image. She starts seeing herself succeeding in math. So your job is done. You can take your chair. And I gave this little, 5-minute skit at a seminar. I was the keynote speaker at a women's conference. And I took my daughter there because I thought it'd be fun for her to go because she could stay in the motel. And she sat in the back and watched the seminar. And when we got home, she said, you know, Mom, I have a math teacher that told me that he would not let me in the math class because he didn't think I could do it. And I'm going to go talk to him and say, I want to try. I want to see if I can do it. And she went and talked to him, and he said, well, I don't think you can do it. And she said, well, I want to try. I want to see if I can. Well, guess what happened? Anybody want to guess? This is what happened. She got the highest grade in the math class. This is real. This really happened. She got the highest grade in the math class, that year. She was in the 7th grade. She got the highest grade in math all the way through high school. She got straight A's because she set a goal to get straight A's. She got straight A's all the way through junior high and high school based on finding out that she could do math. And she changed her self-image, and she saw herself succeeding. So anybody want to guess what, her name is Mickey. Anybody want to guess what Mickey does today? Take a guess. Betty, what do you think?
Accountant.
Close. She is a math teacher. She has taught 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grades in math for 15 years, and she now teaches math at Portland Community College and Clackamas Community College. So that's a true story. Now, what I want to do is I want to tell you another story about a very important person. And this was my neighbor, and he lived across the street. His name was Brent, and I met him when he was 8 years old. He was actually shorter than me, a little bit. But Brent started growing and growing and growing. And by the time he was a sophomore in high school, he was 6'3". And he was in the driveway all the time shooting baskets. And I really wanted to work with a basketball player. This was a goal. So I said one time, Brent, would you be willing, are you serious about basketball? He said, yes. I said, do you really want to be good, really, really want to be good? And he said, yeah, I do. And I said, he knew I taught WinnerVision, but he hadn't been to a seminar. And I said, would you do me a favor? I said, would you let me teach you how to visualize your free throws to see what will happen? And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I read a study. And in the study, there were 2 groups. One group were, basketball players that shot baskets physically. And the other group just visualized their free throws. That's all they did. And I said, would you be willing to do that to see what might happen? And he said, well, tell me more about it. I said, okay, here's how you visualize. You're at the free throw line. You have the basket. You look up. This is how you visualize. You look up, you see the basket, and you see it going in. And shoot, maybe 5 baskets. Or, second person, what you can do is you can watch a video of yourself and just see the ball going in every time you watch the ball. Every time you shoot, it goes in. And so what you're doing is you are, mentally practicing. And let's just see what happens. I said, I just read about this study, and I want to work with a basketball player. And he said, well, okay. I said, just maybe 5 times, see the ball go in, see the ball go in. He said, okay. Well, a year later, this was a year later, he was a junior in high school, and he had a 90% free throw percentage. It went from 50% to 90%. So his coach was a first-year head coach, and he came up and he said, why do you have a 90% free throw percentage? And he said, well, my neighbor taught me how to visualize my free throws. And he said, is she available? So my second goal was not only to work with a basketball player, but to work with a team. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you what I taught them to do. And this is basically the whole WinnerVision seminar right now. I'm going to tell you what I taught them to do, and then I'm going to tell you what happened with that team and a few other teams that used it. Okay, ready? I need Lydia again to come up. And I want to show you the mistakes that I learned that I made, why I couldn't stay focused, and what I learned to change so that I could stay focused. So first problem that I had and the mistake I made is that I had unrealistic expectations. And I thought I practiced hard, so when I made a mistake, it shocked me. I went, what? How could I possibly miss that free throw? So what I did is I blew it up in my mind. And I held on to it, and I just dwelled on it, because I was trying to figure out how in the world did I miss that shot. I mean, it's just a forehand, and I have a good forehand. So I held on to it. And what it did basically is take me out of present time. And so it was just like Kate, the girl that came to her match and was thinking about chemistry instead of thinking about her game. She wasn't in present time. She wasn't focused. Well, one reason I wasn't in present time is because I was dwelling on my mistake. But then I missed a backhand. And I went, what? How could I miss a backhand? So I blew it up. And I tried to figure out how I did that. And then I held on to it. And then it was time for the serve. And I thought, oh no, I hope I don't miss the serve. If I miss the serve, I'm going to lose the game. And I really don't want to double fault. I don't want to hit it into the net twice. That would just be terrible. So I started dwelling on hitting it into the net. Where do you think it went?
In the net.
Yeah, it did. Twice. I lost the game. So I blew that up in my mind. And I held on to it, and I just dwelled on it. I was trying to figure out, how could I double fault? That's just terrible. So there you go. There I am. So instead of being in present time, instead of being focused and thinking about what was happening at the moment, at that very, part of the game, I was thinking about my forehand, my backhand, my serve, and it took me completely out of present time. So here's the secret to WinnerVision. And it seems too simple. WinnerVision, basically, people say, well, it's just too good to be true. That can't be true. But the thing is, that's why I have to tell you about all these stories, because it really works. And it worked for me, and it's worked for everybody that's used it. So what I learned to do is to see a mistake as a temporary setback. And instead of holding on to it and dwelling on it and trying to figure it out, what I did is I learned to say, this is a temporary setback. And so what I'm going to do, I can either hold on to it or I can let it go. What do you recommend? What do you think I should? Let it go? Okay. That's what I did. It's a temporary setback and I let it go. That was the forehand. The backhand, I could hold on to it, I could dwell on it, or I could let it go. Ready? What do you think? Let it go? There it goes. That fast. This was the serve. Double faulted. So anyway, what should I do? Temporary setback, let it go, or hold on to it and dwell on it? Okay. I love that. It takes that long to let it go. And that is a huge part of WinnerVision right there, is teaching athletes not to dwell on their mistakes, but to let them go. And this is the problem when you hold on to your mistakes. Your energy level, you start out, it's at a 10. See that? Energy level. Frustration level starts out at 0. Well, when you start holding on to your mistakes, you know what happens? Your frustration level starts out at 0, goes up to a 10. Your energy level goes from a 10 down to a 0. You know what I learned to do? I really did learn to let go of my mistakes, which meant my energy level stayed at a 10 and my frustration level stayed at a 0. And do you know that in 15 years I had never experienced that? Because I would say most of the time when I played, my frustration level was at a 10 and my energy level went down to a 0. Now the stories that I'm going to tell you about the teams learned to do this. And they learned to stay in present time 90% of the time, have their energy level at a 10 and their frustration level at a 0. Do you see the difference that makes in a person's performance? In anything. You know, it's not just sports. And, I mean, it was very real. And what happens when your frustration level stays at a 10 for a long time, is that it's called, I don't know if you've ever experienced this before, it's called losing it. And so I want to show you how vivid this can be. Just because this might help you decide that it's really not worth it. But people would say, well, don't get shook under pressure. Well, I did get shook under pressure all the time. I was shook. My frustration level was at a 10. My energy level dropped to a 0. So what you have when you lose it basically is a big mess. Here we go. How's that look? I'm not going to tell you the person's name because I can't remember it, but I was just watching the French Open, and one of the players was losing, and his frustration level went up and up and up, and it stayed there. And so he took his racket and slammed it in the ground, broke it in half. This is at the finals of the French Open. And I thought, isn't that too bad? His frustration level is at a 10, and it's going to stay there. He's losing, and he just played worse and worse and worse. So it isn't just kids. It isn't just beginners. This was a professional person, and that just happened. Just saw that. So basically what I did when I talked to Brent's team is I said, this is your choice. So what do you think? Would you like to have an energy level at 10 instead of 0? It's your choice. So, does that make it clear enough? Okay, this was me for 15 years. That's the way I played. I just was a mess. So thank you, Lydia, for helping me demonstrate this. And you get to take your seat again. And so, there's one other part to WinnerVision that I'm going to tell you, and then you get to hear all the success stories. This represents your life. And I not only held on to my mistakes. I just blew them up because I thought they were huge. I didn't realize that we learn from our mistakes. When we are small, we get up, we try to walk, and we fall down. But we get up again, and we fall down. And we get up again, and we fall down. But we're all walking now. So we learned from making mistakes how to walk, how to ride a bike, whatever. Well, not only did I hold on to my mistakes, I also created limitations for myself. The first limitation, this represents my life, was I thought, I have a real problem in the fact that I'm short. That's a problem because the girl I played a lot, Sherry Seaval, she was 5'9". I was 5'2". I went, she's tall, I'm short. That's a problem. And that's why I can't beat her. So the next problem, I said, my next limitation is I said, I'm not good enough. Well, I compared myself to Sherry, and she ended up being Pacific Northwest champion. And so I thought, I'm too short. I'm not good enough. And I didn't get to the ball all the time, so I said, I'm just too slow. I guess I was just born slow. So these are limitations I put on myself. And basically what I did is I tied myself up in knots. And I couldn't relax because I was dwelling on my mistakes and my limitations. So when I would go into a match and somebody like Sherry was 5'9", I went, I'm short and she's tall, and so how could I possibly beat her? Well, I went and watched her play the state finals, and I was sure she would win because she was 5'9", and the girl she was playing was 5'2". She was the same size I was. But the girl that was 5'2" won the match. And I went, what? Hasn't anybody told her that she's 5'2"? And so what did that do? It showed me my theory wasn't right, and that it didn't help me to dwell on my limitations. And so what I learned to do is instead of saying I'm too short, I learned to say I have unlimited potential. and that takes away the limitation. This one, I'm not good enough. Instead, I said, I have unlimited potential. And the next one, I said, I'm too slow. Well, I have unlimited potential, and I can get faster. And so this represents your limitations. And so I had all the players that I worked with take the limitations off themselves. I said, it's your choice. Instead of thinking about your limitations, that maybe you're too slow, you're too small, you can't do it, take all the limitations off, say, I have unlimited potential, and drop it. And I had everybody do that on every team that I worked with. And I said, you know what that does? That just opens up the possibilities of what you can possibly do. So I saw it. I saw it work for me, and I saw it work for a lot of the different athletes I worked with. So what I want to do is I want to tell you what happened with the teams and the athletes that said, I want to take WinnerVision and run with it. And Brent's team went all the way from, they hadn't been in the state tournament in 20 years. They won the first game, they won the second game, they won the third. The third game was the finals, and they lost the state championship by 1 point because the point guard missed a free throw. So after that, I said, okay, instead of just visualizing your free throws, I told every team, visualize making 2 free throws with a second on the clock, just in case that happens again. A couple years later, the Colton team made 2 free throws with a second on the clock and won the state tournament. Several years later, a 7th grade team won the state championship by making 2 free throws with a second on the clock. When I worked with the Oregon City girls basketball team, they won the state championship by making 2 free throws with a second on the clock. Westland High School won the state tournament by making 2 free throws with a second on the clock. What do you think the message is there? I mean, that's 4 teams that won a state championship by making 2 free throws with a second on the clock. What did they do? They visualized the most pressure situation that they possibly could. And when it happened, they were mentally ready. They weren't surprised. They didn't, usually you put a player on the bench so that they can ice them, so that they can just get so overwhelmed by the pressure that they can't handle it. But they were mentally ready. So they loved sitting on the bench because one of the players just pulled his T-shirt up over his head and sat there and visualized. And he made the 2 free throws and won the state championship. I mean, don't you think that's kind of unusual? Well, okay, now what I'm going to do is just start telling you some of the stories of what happened when various teams used WinnerVision. One of the most dramatic examples was the Oregon City girls basketball team. And you're from Oregon, and you've probably heard what's happened with the Oregon City basketball team, but somebody might be watching this in Montana or New York, and you might not know about the Oregon City girls basketball team. But Brad Smith heard about WinnerVision and heard about me, and he really, 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 really wanted to win a state championship. And they had lost twice and, had never won. So he said, how about if you come in and, teach us how to do this? So I went in and I said, okay, what you want to do is you want to visualize winning the state championship with a second on the clock by making 2 free throws. And guess what happened? That's how they won the state championship, their first. But the thing is, they loved WinnerVision. And all the players said, we want to win more state championships. So after the first year, they then won 4 back-to-back state championships and 3 national championships. And Brad Smith's daughter, Ashley Smith, was voted Oregon Player of the Year because her senior year, she made 12 baskets. She was 100% at the free throw line and made 32 assists in one game. So she was a WinnerVision queen. When they played basketball, they put on a basketball clinic and a WinnerVision clinic. And people would say, they are so relaxed, they are so calm, they are so cool, they are so collected. And what did they do? They let go of their mistakes as soon as they happened. And they learned to do it that fast. And they were smiling the whole time. Why? Because it is so much fun to be able to just play your game and get all the mistakes out of the way. So the other person I want to tell you about was the center from the basketball team on Brent's team. His name was Scott Kozak. And after the basketball was over, he was a senior, he was graduating, and I said, Scott, what do you want to do? Because I knew how good he was as an athlete. And he said, well, I'll tell you what I want to do, but nobody believes it's possible. And I said, well, I need to know. What do you want to do? And he said, well, from the time I was about 9 or 10 years old, I have wanted to go to the NFL. But everybody's told me, Scott, that's impossible. You go to Colton High School. There's 200 students at Colton High School. You can't go to the NFL. I mean, scouts don't come from the University of Oregon to Colton to watch football players. They do at the big schools, but not at Colton High School. So it's impossible. And he said, I've heard this all my life. And I said, well, here's what I think we should do. I said, let's just visualize it. If you really, really, really want it, he said, I do. You've wanted it all your life. Let's just visualize it and believe it. Just see what could happen. And he said, okay. So he decided to try out for the University of Oregon football team as a walk-on because he wasn't invited, he wasn't recruited, nobody had ever heard of him. And so he walked up to sign up and they said, well, what's your name? Scott Kozak. Well, what's your school? Colton High School. Colton High School, we've never heard of that. How many students are at Colton High School? 200? Okay, well, no pressure, but you are competing with the top athletes in Oregon from the biggest schools in Oregon. And he said, yes, I know. I want to see what I can do. He wanted to try and just see what would happen. So at the end of the day, the head coach came up to him and he said, I have never heard of you, and I have never heard of Colton High School, and offered him a free ride to the University of Oregon in football. Well, Scott had taken WinnerVision, and he had run with it. He was exceptionally good under pressure. And at the end of 4 years at the University of Oregon, he was a second-round draft choice for the Houston Oilers and played in the NFL for 5 years. What happened? How did that happen? He made a decision to try and see what he could do. And he found out he was able to stay focused under pressure, and he played exceptionally good football. Everybody on the team knew he was going to the NFL because he was just such an exceptional player under pressure. And he did exceptionally well for 5 years in the NFL. The next story I want to tell you about the Oregon City football team. And I really, really wanted to work with the Oregon City football team. I'd worked with other football teams, but this was a large school, and I knew Ed Burton, and he was just an exceptionally wonderful coach. And so I started the seminar. I was explaining everything, and he said, Beth, I said, what? He said, I just want you to know that we have gone to the playoffs 10 years in a row, and we have never won one time. We have never won one playoff game in 10 years. I just wanted you to know that. And I said, okay, thank you for that information. And at that point, I just thought, I hope that the whole team decides to take WinnerVision and run with it. But you never know. Sometimes it's just a few players. And it took until the last 3 games of the season, and all of them decided to take WinnerVision and run with it. And they went from 50% focused to 90% focused the last 3 games of the season, plus all the way through 5 playoff games. And they didn't just win by a point. One of the biggest games of the season of the playoffs, it was written a full page in the article in the paper saying, Oregon City is through. That's it. They don't have a chance. This is the number 2 team in the state. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're more experienced. They're ranked number 2. Oregon City is not ranked. They do not have a chance against this team. Well, I'll tell you what the score was. 35-7. Who do you think won? Oregon City beat the number 2 team in the state 35-7 and shocked the entire state. And one player, his name was Jason Trolley, said, I want to take WinnerVision and run with it. And he told everybody on the team, I hope you're with me because I'm going for it. He was the running back. He, at that time, had played, this is his senior year, he had played, but everybody always had told him, you're too short, you're too small. He was 185 pounds and 5'8". I mean, he was like half the size of all these guys that were trying to tackle him. But he won Offensive Player of the Year because he had 1,100 yards in 5 playoff games, and he became unstoppable. No one could tackle him. So that is the story about Jason Trolley, and I really want to end with one story that shocked me. This was a student that I had that sat in this chair when he was 14 years old, and he set a goal, and he said, I am going to take WinnerVision and run with it. And he set a goal to get straight A's because he wanted to see if he could get a scholarship to college. He knew his parents couldn't afford it, and he wanted to try. So he got straight A's all the way through junior high and high school. He got a scholarship to college. He got to college and he said, okay, now what I want to do, I want to set a goal to get my PhD. And I need a scholarship. And straight A's are not going to be good enough. So he set a goal to study abroad. And he got 3 scholarships, Fulbright scholarships, to study abroad. He studied in Spain, China, and Australia. And when he graduated, he got 5 offers from 5 universities saying, why don't you come to our school? We would like you to get your PhD here. And I talked to him. He decided on Stanford. So I talked to him right before he left for Stanford. And I said, Aaron, did WinnerVision help you? And he said, Beth, you and WinnerVision are the reason I just got a scholarship to Stanford. He said, you taught me to set goals and visualize my goals. And he said, this is what I want. Last year, he graduated with his PhD. So I want to tell you one last story, and then we're through. This is a story about my son-in-law that came home after an interview for a job. And I said, Christian, why are you smiling like that? I mean, he was just kind of glowing. And he said, well, I just interviewed for this job. And he said, 10 years ago, I was in a class at Portland State, and the teacher said, I want you to write down your dream job. Just write it down, put it on paper. So he said, okay. So he wrote down a job, and he said, I would like to work in a nonprofit, because he was getting a master's degree in nonprofit management. He said, I would like to work in a nonprofit teaching children music, and I think it should be in a renovated church. And that was what he wrote down. He said, I just interviewed for a job, and it is in a nonprofit teaching music to children, and it is in a renovated church. And he's been there about 8 months, and this is the first time since I've known him that he says, I love my job. I love my job. Why? Because it was a vision. It was what he really, really wanted. He wrote it down, and then he prepared for it. I mean, he worked in 3 different nonprofits, so when they offered him the job, he was qualified to take it. So, when I say, would you like to take WinnerVision and run with it? Think back. Think back to my daughter, who decided to try and see if she could do math. And she got straight A's in math all the way through junior high and high school, and is now a math teacher. Think about Brad Smith, who said, I really, really, really want to win a state championship. Right now they have won 12 state championships in Oregon. And Ashley Smith, his daughter, was not only the best point guard in Oregon, she was the best point guard in the country for 3 years in a row. And then Jason Trolley, they always said, well, you're too small. You're only 5'8". And he said, well, then why can't anybody tackle me? He took WinnerVision and he ran with it. And then Scott Kozak was told his whole life, forget the NFL. That's ridiculous. You go to a school that's got 200 students. Do you think the scouts are going to come look for you? Well, he decided, I'll go to them. So he walked on and was offered a full ride to the University of Oregon and went to the NFL. So, I mean, and then Aaron's story. He was 14 years old in my seminar and said, I want to get a scholarship to college. Then in college he said, I want to get a scholarship to get my PhD. That's what I want. And he visualized it, he believed it, and then he also applied. He didn't just think about it, he took action. So there you go. There's a few examples, and I'd like to tell you about, 20 or 30 more, but that's okay. I won't. Just call me. I'm sitting by the phone waiting for you to call me, because I can't wait to find out what happens. First of all, are you going to take WinnerVision and run with it? And if you do, I can't wait to hear what happens. So, what I'm going to ask you to do is to start your WinnerVision race, and to do that, you stand up and I set you off. So, you stand up, everybody stand, and you take the WinnerVision baton, and I start the race. I just finished my race, you know. Only took me 40 years, but I got here. So you take your baton, and I say, runners to your mark, get set, go. Thank you. Thank you for being here.